morning, Charlotte.
Morning.
Well,
Thank you for having me.
yeah, and I just express my gratitude for you and for everybody else for attending. But the keynote is for you to introduce yourselves and talk to us a little bit about your experience as a social housing resident, and that will give us a nice prelude to have a discussion with some of the other speakers and on our discussion panel. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you, and good morning. Thank you for having me. This is not my area of expertise, so I'm very, very nervous, but that's not why I'm here. I'm not here because I'm an information or a housing expert. I'm here because I'm a service user or someone who's experienced it. And I really value that because what I've recognised through my journey in different areas of personal life and my career is you don't know what you don't know, and that's such a cliche, but those innate blind spots that come from just not experiencing things from that perspective mean that a lot of things can be designed without the person that they're for in mind. And that actually led me to some pretty dangerous experiences in social housing. I had a fantastic upbringing. I never expected that I'd have to experience social housing. I was really privileged. It just isn't something that occurred to me. But I had undiagnosed mental health and also had undiagnosed neurodiversity. And I just thought, when I try harder, I'll be able to do that whole life thing, that everyone else is doing, the partner and the kids and the mortgage, the house that they seem to not keep losing. But my experience was that I'd get a really good job because I'm qualified, get a really, really nice life because I'm capable. But I couldn't keep it because those constructs that need to be in place, I really struggle with. And no matter how hard I try, that will always be there. That saw me becoming homeless in my 30s. And that, again, wasn't something that was ever on the agenda. And, Tornado Charlotte had just destroyed family's life over and over and over again. I really had burnt all of my bridges in many ways. So I was living in my car. I ended up needing emergency accommodation. And the more vulnerable I got, the more poorly I got, and the more I needed help, the less appropriate the provisions became. So when I was at my most poorly and really not able to advocate for myself at all, despite having a law degree, I was put into a terrace house with a man, and it was exempt accommodation. So it cost you guys a fortune to have me in there. And there was a hole in the toilet door and there was no staff. Um, and so that was a disaster waiting to happen. It cost the taxpayer a lot of money for me to be assaulted and stolen from and traumatized again. But at the time, why wasn't I just grateful to have a roof over my head? In terms of information, that experience ended up costing me £300 because somebody hadn't transferred my information over, and I probably wasn't in a very good state to be doing life admin. So maybe I hadn't noticed, but that fell on me. So you can imagine the scenario when I get back on the blower to my dad. I'm like, Dad, really, really sorry. I need £300 again. Yeah, this is the last time. No, of course I'm not giving you that. But when I thought about it after, why would somebody pay for their daughter when they're the most poorly they've ever been to be sexually assaulted and stolen from and housed somewhere completely inappropriately? But it was very much a case of, but you're somewhere. Unfortunately, we didn't pay for that. And unfortunately, as the more I got better, the white noise sort of dissipated and my law degree in the drawer started to come to the forefront of my mind. And I realised that actually things like duty of care do exist. And the information had been really mismanaged. My needs have been really mismanaged. On every level, it was so inappropriate. But I was so unwell, I wasn't able to manage that myself, which is exactly why I needed the service. Today, I could navigate that. That wouldn't happen to me today. It wouldn't happen to me today, but I don't need it. Now I don't need it. But it wouldn't happen. So it got me thinking as I got moved to the next safe place. And it was communal and noisy, and it was in a state of disrepair. there would be reasons for that, and I don't claim to know what they are, why they can't keep them nice. But I found it profoundly hard to pick my head up and to start to build on anything whilst I couldn't sleep. I had my own complex needs. Everybody else had their own complex needs. Everybody shouting. It was like, it was a really hostile environment. I'm really fortunate that I do have that knowledge of what's acceptable and what's not, because a lot of the people I spoke to in there had no concept that anything should be any better. You know, why should it be? Why shouldn't you have black mold in your bathroom? Well, I was spending 4 hours a day in there because I was really poorly and bulimic, and that was no good for me. Why shouldn't I have the opportunity to sleep when I've been in my car, when I've been, insane for a really long time? How am I going to have a good prospect of success if I'm in these environments? And also, how am I supposed to even conceive that I'm able to come back from the fringes of society and to become a meaningful member of the community if I'm constantly in accommodation, which is the dregs? And, it just didn't make any sense. I remember when COVID hit, I was like, you've got to let me come home. I'm a woman in my 30s. I've been home and back, home and back, home and back 100 times. I could not keep a tenancy. I couldn't pay my bills. I couldn't keep a job. What was wrong with me? I still didn't know. So there was no way I was going home. And I was like, but I'm in a leper colony full of drug addicts. Never mind the fact that I was, rolling in the thick of it myself. No concept of that. But I'm really glad they said no. I'm really glad they said no, you can't come home. But what got me was it highlighted the perceptions of where I was to them. They thought I was lying. They thought, you've got to be lying just to try and get home, because they knew I was desperate, manipulative, and ill. And I was telling them about the conditions. I was telling them about what's going on. Like, well, you need to get onto the MP then, because nobody should be living like that. And we're paying, taxpayers are paying for it. And those were the same perceptions I'd had. Those people in those places need to try harder. They need to pull the socks up. They need to try harder. Then they'll be living somewhere nice. They don't have to live in places like this. And actually, that's there, and I'm here. And it just wasn't like that at all. I couldn't try harder. I didn't have access to making it better. And it just felt such hard work. Like running at walls was how I experienced that whole thing. And like I say, for me now, I probably on paper could go through that process. I could go into social house, like emergency accommodation. I could be like, this isn't safe. I don't want to be here. This is no good for me. And I will put in all the steps you're telling me to do to transition out of this. But at the time, I was just not capable of it. I wasn't capable. And the system wasn't designed to move me through it. It was almost like, I remember saying, I hope I'm not going to offend anybody, but I remember saying, like, is social housing like Squid Game? Because it should be simple. The game looks simple, but then I go to play it, and it's breaking me. It's breaking me. But I don't just want to sit here and say loads of really bad things and be really condemnatory, because I want to just also precursor this with, I'm sitting in a social housing flat now, and it's really nice, and I've got a really nice life, and I love it. So please don't underestimate anybody here how powerful your position is in providing an environment that somebody can either thrive or completely disintegrate into a million bits. And I've experienced both. And that's not because anybody in these sectors wants to do a bad job. Nobody wants to go, I know you're on a downward spiral. I'm going to make things really hard for you. But I would be lying if I didn't point out the very different experiences that I have as somebody who's well and someone who's poorly, And that's what's a shame. I think, like I said, the more vulnerable I got, the less appropriate my environment became, both in terms of my physical environment, my living environment, complex me put with other complex people in places where the walls are paper thin, right? So, of course we are. And it becomes really complex. And I know what good practice is because I'm sat in it. So I'm now sat in a really beautiful flat, which is on a really quiet part of town, and there's loads of nature. So sometimes when I can't face the world, I can see, nature. It's there. There's only a few people that have got, I would say, complex needs. So if I go down, it's unlikely to, have a massive effect on lots of people. If they go downhill and start to experience really hard challenges again that have caused them to need emergency accommodation to move on in the past, it's not going to have a massive effect because I'm not with 13 other people like I was in that other place, and we're not sharing a bathroom and there's no hole in the toilet door, and I've got my privacy, I've got my independence, I've got a beautiful standard of living. So when I go out into the world, I present myself in a completely different way. And in terms of my housing and other people's housing, it makes a massive difference, let me tell you. So the whole time I was going through all of that, and now I remember saying, the left hand's not speaking to the right hand. The left hand's not speaking to the right hand. I've told you this about me before, or you can't do that because that's going to be a nightmare for me, or whatever. Or I'd say, I promise I will try harder. And then I just bloody wouldn't. Just wouldn't. But I would want to every time, but I wasn't well. And the expectation was always on me to get it right. And until I got it right, I could lose everything. And no matter how much I wanted to get it right, I would get in my own way. So with that in mind, I kind of got sick of telling people that I'm just really rubbish. So I just wouldn't. And I do feel that if I took that approach, well, not took that approach, but if I wasn't given a more supportive environment this time, this would happen again. I would get a beautiful flat. Yes. Get a nice job, maybe get a fella. And then I would experience something with my mental health, or maybe there's some part of something would probably break and I'd feel overwhelmed and I wouldn't do anything about it. And then all of a sudden, it starts to fall through my fingers. And I get on the phone and I say, help, this is a problem. And they go, I meet you with a blockade. And that's when I start becoming difficult. I don't know how to do this stuff. I'm not an information person. I'm not a housing person. I don't know how to fix the shower when it's tripped out. I just know how to sit there and feel overwhelmed. And at my best, I'll pick the phone up. At my worst, I'll open a bottle of wine. I'll ruin my life. And I don't always have control over where my head's at medicated. I do have a better chance than others. But I just don't know, and I feel safe here. I have one single point of access that I can talk to. So I only have to build myself up to speak to them. And then things do happen. I'm not saying where I am is perfect, certainly not. But it's designed with the fact that I have not always got the best life admin skills. I'm not always the most resilient. I could definitely do without protracted, repeated chasing of this stuff. And yeah, it's just designed with me in mind. And I love that because I feel like it's given me a good prospect of success. That is not what I experienced when I was really poorly. And that's not what everybody experiences. So I'm just noticing the time. We've got like 10 minutes left, 15 minutes left. So I'm still social housing tenant. So are lots of the people that I was in emergency accommodation with. And we've all got very varying needs and degrees of success. My partner was housed. There was a bit of a nightmare with that. You can't get out of emergency accommodation until you've got your kids who are in foster care, but you can't have your kids who are in foster care until you've got a 3-bedroom house. But you can't bid on a 3-bedroom house until you've got 2 kids to go in there with, but you're in a hostel. So again, law degree out the drawer. But if I hadn't have been well, I wouldn't have had that resilience. If he hadn't have been able to speak to somebody who was like, this makes no sense, I don't think he would have known or thought that there was a solution. It was just really hard because the people that you expect to support you through that become the blockades. I need a house, I need a nice house, or else they won't let me have the children. Well, we're going to offer you a single flat somewhere that men who exit hostels go, and it's going to be vile. And you're not, for health reasons, you're not going to want to have your kids there on weekends, let alone to get them out of foster care. So it's going to cost the system tons of money for you to be in £200 a week accommodation, for your kids to be in foster care, just because you can't click on a button and ask for a 3-bed house before you've got them. And that was my experience. Everyone was paying for me to be sexually assaulted. I wouldn't do that. It's when your family member was vulnerable and they come to your house and said, I'm really sorry, like I've done it again. You wouldn't send them there. You may invite them in this time because maybe they've just done it. But you certainly wouldn't send them somewhere that was unclean, unhygienic, unsafe, and somewhere that was unsupportive, because if they're already presenting like a bit of a nightmare, they will probably not have the wherewithal within themselves to navigate and survive complex situations. They probably need anything to be that simple. So yeah, when I say about the left hand not speaking to the right hand, for me it just makes loads of sense that if I'm not doing so well, I could do with all those things being easy, and then I can look at the being well. And that's what's happening for me now. I work with a charity with care leavers. Again, they leave foster care or children's homes at 18. They get put into invariably tall blocks of flats with people with entrenched complex needs. It's loud. There's not a lot of it's very, everyone knows each other. It's all communal. It's bad conditions. It's low. It's, in a nutshell, you've got a house, well done, but through no fault of your own, because you've been in social care and you've got a corporate parents of the, your parents are the government. You've got a roof over your head that makes you feel like you're not already part of society. You're already going to struggle, and to make it right, it's there's so much to do. Your corridor stinks of urine, and now sort yourself out. So those things, it's almost like the less resources somebody has, the bigger the mountain must become for them to feel like they're just part of what everyone else has got. And it's so important. I started to talk about my partner before we got sidetracked, and his experience is that he will say, I've got a hole in the wall, and somebody will come round, and this is true, they will put a ham packet, packet of wafer thin ham, empty obviously, over the hole and tape it. Like, that's unacceptable. I wouldn't even profess that to be a solution with my limited knowledge of anything to do around the home. But my partner, who hasn't got that blueprint of successful family life because he's been in care, who doesn't have the supportive framework of an auntie, uncle, father, sister, anything to ring up and be like, how do I sort this out? Goes to their social housing provider and says, I've got a hole in the wall. And they get that. It is a solution. Like, there's no mice are running in. But it's not the kind of solution that then enables him to be free of that issue and able to focus on the things he needs to focus on. Staying well, getting over the fact that he's been homeless, having the children, those things. And like for me, there's no holes in the wall. If someone come and put a hand packet on it, I just feel like it's like such a piece of rubbish. And I'd be too ashamed to probably chase it up, even if I could. And then I'm just getting about in the world with resentment against my housing provider. And I'm getting about in the world feeling like yet again, I've not got that manual for life that you've all got. And I've not got, because nobody lives with hand packets on the walls. But I do. When I moved into this place, lovely as it was, it's just those blind spots, which is exactly why I'm here and you're there, and we're listening to each other, because it made sense for the housing association to rip the carpets out and take the curtain poles. I'm guessing because maybe there's a safety reason, I don't know. But there will be a reason that my blind spot doesn't know about. But there's also a reason that their blind spot doesn't know about, why I need that stuff, because I've just come out of homeless accommodation in my 30s, and I've pretty much used up every single financial and personal resource I've ever had. And the church have given me a big bag of curtains that sat on the floor for a year and a half because I didn't have anything to put them on. And actually just even doing that was an ordeal. I don't know how. I'm not sure who to ask. Sounds really simple, doesn't it? But to me, unless I'm firing on all cylinders, that becomes like the least of my worries. I need to make sure I'm paying my bills, having a wash, not destroying my interpersonal relationships, keeping a job. That all has to come first, so the curtains stay on the floor. So I suppose what I will kind of summarise all of that stuff is, there's so many elements to it, but it seems to make absolutely no sense that you have to try harder when you're struggling the most. When your resilience is low, the requirement of you is higher. And that can only be because people don't get it. They must just be thinking, you do. I think I was perceived as not caring. You don't care. You keep messing it up. But I'm still the same person. So the same person that rings up and says it's unacceptable to put a hand packet on my wall, somebody needs to come and find a proper solution. They think I'm a key worker now, and they come and sort it out. But I'm the same person that was put into that house with that man with the hole in the bathroom door when I was really, really just incapable of, I don't know, presenting myself in any way. And I was vulnerable, really vulnerable. I'm still that same person. I embody all of those experiences, but yet my experiences of the world are really different. And it's back to front for me. Now, you can sling me a challenge and I'm okay today. But I might not always be, and that's why social housing is so fantastic. I'm in social housing, I'm all right today. I'm in no rush to not be here, because any day, the deck of cards could fall down again, whether I want them to or not. And I need to know that it's not just me and a private landlord, or just me, just me, left to my own devices. I need to know that my social housing provider will not let me detonate, will make sure that they send floating support to make sure that I am still paying my bills, that I change over to UC from, all these things that have to happen that I won't be able to do. Make sure that I am still putting my bins out if I start to just go under. I need to be with social housing. I do. And it just, for me, it's so important to acknowledge the wonderful work that goes on. There's good practice everywhere. There's also bad practice, and that's not because anyone's a bad person. No one gets up to work and thinks, I'm just going to make everyone's life really hard. It can only be because of these blind spots, because people don't feel they can offer a solution that makes sense. But we all know what makes sense, because it's what we'd do for someone we know, somebody who we think is trying, somebody who we respect, somebody who is presenting themselves well. And we need to have that approach, I feel, for the people that are not doing that, because it's the same, given the right environment, I was able to really focus on myself, get well, and have a great life. If I'd have still been in those other environments, I would still be really ill, because I wouldn't have had the capacity and space to attend to anything else. It would have all been taken with the relentless struggling and arguing and everyone else's stuff, and this needs sorting, that needs sorting. And do you know what? Of course I live in it, because that's just who I am now. So the environment wasn't conducive to change or thriving or succeeding when I needed it the most. I don't know where I'm up to with the time, actually. I'm hoping that I've not prattled on till lunch. The ADHD will make me time blind. So if you are, like, just wave at me. But yeah, I'm really hoping that in sharing my experience and the experiences of others, it's kind of just food for thought, really. I don't have any suggestions about what needs to be done different or better, but what I do know is that, like I say, it 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 just tends to be that things don't make sense, and I think that must be because everyone's really in it. Like when I was really in it, I was really busy arguing about that 300 quid and the mould and the this and the that, and it was really difficult. And it's only being able to take that step back that I can take that overview and be more objective and sort of look at it as a whole. Um, so I think that's why I think that is really important to have all the voices around the table from lots of different perspectives, um, to make things better, because I'm sure that's what everybody wants. They want it to be better. No social housing provider wants somebody like me ringing up when they're in the thick of a manic, going absolutely off on one, because it's, nobody wants that, and nobody wants a tenancy that's gone into disrepair because I've gone into overwhelm and and I'm blocked off. And it doesn't have to happen either. However, it makes so much sense that if you put somebody in an environment that's hostile, difficult, dangerous, traumatizing, unsafe, they're not going to be able to manage that very well. So, yeah, I think I'll probably just wrap up with saying thank you for having me. It's definitely not a platform that I ever thought I would be speaking on, but I'm really glad to be here, and I'm really glad that social housing does exist, because with the best will in the world and 2 degrees and a great supportive family who, thank goodness, now give me the time of day again, I can't guarantee that I am going to have a successful tenancy if I don't have help, for many reasons. So I'm really glad that there is something in place that when it's done right, I can thrive, and I can feel safe. If it all falls apart tomorrow, I'll be okay. I won't be back in the car. I won't be back in that terraced house with that guy. Once I've got the right supportive accommodation, I felt like it was a safety net. The way I described the other side of it in the past was that it was a spider's web. I'd get trapped. I'd be like vulnerable. I'd fall through some cracks. And it really can be the difference between being a spider's web or a safety net, depending on how it's done. So I hope that's okay.
That's more than okay, and really appreciate you sharing your experiences. And it's really a lot to take away and to reflect on. I think one of the really compelling contrasts that you draw on is where you are now. You're thriving, as you say, and you obviously have some nice accommodation. You feel safe, but before it wasn't like that. And social housing is meant to be supporting people. And my opinion is that wherever you live, you should be able to forget about the issues around your house and just get along with your life. And when that's not happening, when you have a ham packet, which that's just now it's kind of fun. Obviously it's just ridiculously poor service, but at the time it's really iconic of just failure. And that shouldn't happen, but occasionally it does. And I think we can start to examine that and share that with some of the other speakers that we have. And you stick around for the conversation as well, and join in as But I think we could, if we might just be 1 minute ahead of schedule now, so it's just perfectly timed, your keynote speech. And what I would also like to say is it's just really fantastic that often in information management or construction or building safety, social housing is at the end of the day. And it's really, really refreshing. And I'm really grateful to Nima to putting social housing front and center. And, one of our speakers has got some really compelling statistics on actually how widespread or how important really social housing is, because I know, for example, in London, if I'm not mistaken, 1 out of every 10 people is in social housing. So if you're on the tube, it's very much part of the fabric of life. And it was really important for society, and it's important for construction, and it's important for information management, which is, obviously our hosts for today.